Okay, there's the way it gets locked in. You know, it hits the round edge, outwardly round, um, and intrusive into the pool, I guess. And you can see the frontmost and rightmost and frontmost tire gets itself right in that corner. Okay, here we go. Now we're starting to get a backup. Okay, so the backup valve is kicking, starting to pull. All right, so starting to pull the unit back. Yeah, a little bit. It's pulling a little more. Surprisingly, it's pulling, kind of okay for right now. I mean, it is lethargic. It's pulling slow, but okay. So you can see it didn't pull it nearly far enough. The backup sequence has ended, and what's going to happen? It's going to go right back into the same area, and it's going to slide along the pool, sit there and rotate until it gets right back up in the same position, and voila, you are locked in. So, yep. So not only does the thing get around the pool lethargic, but the backup valve won't perform well enough to back this thing out of this scenario, and you just maybe 1 out of 20 backup cycles that'll come out of the hole there just by pure luck, but you're losing so much of your investment. The power to run the pool pump, the Polaris is $1,000, was 3,900 new, used to be $1,000. You put a rebuild kit in there, it's $150, and the rebuild kit didn't fix this problem, right? Because it's a water management unit. Water management unit does not come with a rebuild. This is the culprit. Yep. You might say, well, it just directs water. There's not anything really mechanical in it. Well, there is an adjustment, okay? So in terms of like gearbox mechanics, there's not any mechanics that are actually actively moving other than water flow going through. But this, you can see the bars, small bar here, a little larger bar, a little larger, a little larger. And what that means is you rotate this thing, it's a valve, a restriction valve, a flow valve. So when you rotate it all the way to the right, that means it's going to put the maximum flow through the tail sweep. Okay, the tail sweep is a long hose tail that flutters back and forth in the pool, cleaning the sides of your pool with the little discs. So kind of looks like a snake, slithering back and forth in the pool, and that's due to that hose being pressurized with water and water flowing out the tail of that hose where the little scrubber black piece is. Well, this controls the flow, but it's also where the actual damage or where the problem that we had with the old unit backing up occurred. And that is you see water spraying out around the edges of this thing. In other words, where my finger, I'm going around, the water was being sprayed out of this thing instead of being sprayed out through the pipe here, right? It's being sprayed out of the edge. And so the other way that we know this is somewhat that you can suspect there's damage is you can turn it, but it sounds very gritty, almost like it's got dirt in the mechanism that allows the thing to turn, and it's hard to turn, right? And on a new one, they're detent type stops. As you rotate it, goes from the detent stop of 1 bar to indicate, hey, you're in the small setting, the next setting, the next setting. But there's detents for each one of these bars that you'll see here, right? But it rotates through those detents quite easily. And when you have the tail hose on there and you grab it by the hose and the whole thing here and turn by hand, it turns quite easily. So you can adjust the amount of tail pressure that you get, and it will affect the speed that your tail, slithers back and forth like a snake. If you turn this over to its weakest setting, then the tail doesn't slither nearly as much. Okay, so we're going to put this unit back in because I've already placed the new one in here. In opening video, you saw how active the Polaris 3900 was, but now we're going to put the broken one back in there, and you're going to get to see exactly how this thing affects the performance of the unit, and very specifically the problem that it causes with the backup valve. And you would tend to think that the backup valve should be somewhat independent of the Polaris because it has its own mechanics and it's upstream, but not so. And this video is going to prove that to you. You're going to see that with this unit on there in here, that backup valve does not do nearly as good. Okay, so now this is the very key part here. See all the water? See all this water here? Not out of the tail, the rooster tail. That's at the bottom. But you got water pouring out here from around the outside of where the tail attaches. When we get it up closer here, you can see here the water is just gushing out here and around. And even if you rotate it all the way to the right, okay, which supposed to give you more pressure out of your tail here, right? And it does. You still got water just gushing here, and that's a lot of your power loss. Huge amount of power loss moving. Okay, well, backup valve is starting to kick. Okay, backup valve is this part right there where my finger's pointing. It's like a big almond, black almond, plastic almond. Okay, so it's pulling on it. It's not pulling on it very hard. Now you would think that, once the backup valve, it's got its own gears and mechanics in it, you'd think that, once it gets to the peak of its cycle, that it would be the only thing in control, because the only thing in control of the power, because the Polaris is downstream from that. The water's flowing through that backup valve, but it's not so. And this proves it. I mean, I'm going to show you here where, we've lost power because the water management unit inside the Polaris is broken. And put it on there now so you can see it, and you can see just exactly how lethargic the Polaris is. I mean, look here. It didn't even want to climb all the way up the wall, and it's turning already. It's lost power. It's lost serious power. It's all because that rotational valve, that restriction valve, adjusts the pressure. Here again, we're very lethargic, Up the units. Okay, there's a little bit of that's bubble, but it's also lethargic. It just does not have the strength. The wheels are not turning as fast. And just barely getting around the pool. The tail's not whipping at all. This is not gearbox, so a rebuild kit won't fix this problem. This is the actual, constriction valve that adjusts the pressure to that tail hose. Over here, we'll actually look at it and see how well it climbs on this side. Yep, doesn't even make it to the top. It starts turning lost power already. Okay, the backup valve is kicked, and you can tell it's just the backup valve's not really, pulling hard. If it were, it would be pulling, away from the thing, and it just is not. There just is not enough juice in this puppy, not enough power in this puppy to do its work. Water management assembly, new one, got to replace it. Rebuild kit, probably not a bad idea just to go ahead and do the because water management assembly, I think it's only like 30 bucks. The rebuild kit is like 100 and a half or better, somewhere between 100 and a half and 200. So what's, I mean, even if the water management assembly were 50 bucks, why wouldn't you go ahead and write, $1,000 Polaris. Okay, here we go. Now we're starting to get a backup. Okay, so the backup valve is kicking, starting to pull. All right, so starting to pull the unit back. Yeah, a little bit. It's pulling a little more. Surprisingly, it's pulling, kind of okay for right now. I mean, it is lethargic. It's pulling slow, but okay, so you can see it didn't pull it nearly far enough. The backup sequence is ended, and what's going to happen? It's going to go right back into the same area, and it's going to slide along the pool, sit there and rotate until it gets right back up in the same position, and voila, you are locked in. So, yep. So not only does the thing get around the pool lethargic, but it won't. The backup valve won't perform well enough to back this thing out of this scenario, and you just, maybe 1 out of 20 backup cycles it'll come out of the hole there just by pure luck, but you're losing so much of your investment. The power to run the pool pump, the Polaris is $1,000, was $1,000, 3,900 new, used to be $1,000. You put a rebuild kit in there, it's 150 bucks, and the rebuild kit didn't fix this problem, right? Because it's a water management unit. Water management unit does not come with the rebuild. To, get the old part back on there, the broken part back on here to illustrate, we need to take this twist tie off of there. Now, Polaris uses a different kind of clamp thing, but the dealers have both said that these zip ties will actually get better leverage. You can pull the zip tie and the hose will stay on there better than the clamp that actually came with it. So I have a new clamp to put back on there. I just didn't, because 2 dealers both were using this technique, using zip tie, and so that's what I chose to use, and it works great. So anyway, I got to cut that thing off of there, and then pull the hose off. The hose is attached to the water unit. It's attached right there to that constraint valve that we're talking about that affects us. Water management, we got the hose off. We'll get the water management. We got to pull these 3 screws here, here, here. They're all the same size. There'll be 3 more screws inside that pull the water management unit loose, and so we'll get these 3 out. Okay, so the unit's off. I just leave the screws, leave this thing setting upside. You can dump the screws out of there if you want, but it's just good to hang on to them, not lose them there. You probably do want to have a surface that's water safe to, splash a little water around. Countertop's fine for that. Okay, so now here's your water management unit. As you pull it out of there, the gray thing's going to come with it. Then we'll snap that off of there after the water unit comes off. Water unit will come off by using the same size screwdriver, same screws, same type screws, and there, and there. Notice that the other screw holes, they're gold, and those were the ones that held the bottom panel onto the unit. So get these off. Once you get the screws out, it is very, very, I'm not going to say, I'm going to say you have to use a little bit of force. This is pretty hard plastic, but the issue is that there's a circular part. It's a tube, and it has an O-ring on it, a big O-ring, and that whole tube goes back up inside here, all the way up to, fit in with this water inlet thing. It's where the water comes into the unit, basically, and that O-ring is very tight, and so you have to pull hard enough, and usually what you got to do is get your screwdriver in here and pry a bit to get that O-ring to pull out of there, to at least loosen it up enough that you can pull the whole thing. The other thing is that this gray somewhat separates easily. This might look like it's holding it, but it's not, or there's not enough pressure here to when you got the pressure you need to pull this thing up. So getting it off of there is basically this way, but don't hit yourself or damage something, hitting it, moving it, your hand in a manner, because when it finally breaks loose of there, you're going to come back with your hand quite a bit, and you could do damage to yourself or something else, or if you're using a screwdriver to pry. Just be careful, but do realize that you're going to have to use some force to get it off of there. It's just they always have been that way. It's not just this one. Even before, I had a whole different. This is a rebuild kit, whole different setup, same thing. So it just goes with it. 3900. It's just water management simply needs some real force to. Okay, so this is the water management unit, and I've got the screws off. Put them right over here, the 3 of them. And so anyway, as I was saying, to get it off of there though, you got to really, do some prying and some pretty hard pulling to get it off of there. So it, it separates off of this guy pretty strongly, but I think the best place to, let's see if we got a best place is right here. You see this little alcove? That's where the water is sprayed. It's a little jet assembly that jets out here off the water management unit, and it sprays up inside the gearbox and turns these little fans inside the gearbox. That's what drives the wheels on the unit. So, but you can use that as some leverage. This is just pulled. There's no mechanical. It just sticks in there. It's held in there, so there's nothing mechanical holding it there. But you can kind of, pry this thing by sticking your screwdriver in. Just there you go. So, okay. So now yours is probably going to be a little harder because this has been out of here recently. After yours has been in the pool though, running around for years or whatever, that O-ring is going to really have, seated strongly in there. Almost probably feels like it's glued. So, you're going to have to use a screwdriver and pry here, a strong one, prying underneath this. Don't get out here on don't get out here on this outer. Get your screwdriver up under the main portion of the body, or just any place, But once you see, this thing, you'll see here that, it doesn't separate here. It's this whole thing here. When you start looking at it, inside, when it's attached here, you'll start thinking, oh, well, it's going to separate there and could break easily. And But then, you know, once you get it off here, you realize it's a rugged piece. That's not to say you couldn't break it. It just, you know, it's some light prying on it with, you know, from one direction or the other. But the prying really needs to occur, you know, mostly in this area, because you can see, here's the O-ring right here, right? Look how big that thing is. See, that goes way up inside there to seal off where the water is injected. You know, water is injected into this, and that O-ring is what seals that off and ensures that the water sprays through all the right orifices in this water management assembly. I call it a water management manifold because it is like a manifold. And so anyway, yeah, that's what's holding you up. You know, it's this O-ring here, and you can see I mean, it just stick my thumb in here, you know. Yeah, and I got big hands, so that gives you a good idea of how big around that O-ring is. And you're trying to break it loose, you know, from, well, yeah, let's see here. Now you can see right here. Oh, there you go. See the ledge in there? Let's see here. We get some better light. You can kind of tell there's a little ledge in there, and you know that's where the pipe sticks up in there, and that's what you're having to break loose. You're having to break, you know, get this tube here, right? This tube part here, it's inserted up in there, right? And so you have to pull that back out of that area, and so, you know, you've got about I'd say here I marked it on my finger, a good ½ inch, maybe not a ½ inch, could be between 1/4 inch and a ½ inch there, that, you know, has got to be pulled forward before the whole assembly will come off of the unit. But once you get that, you know, tube, you know, once you get the O-ring clear of this, you know, this edge here, you're good to go. I mean, it just comes freely at that point. No bind back here on the, you know, the gray. You just realize that, hey, that, you know, that it's nice, and you know, it adjoins the blue, and it might look like it's, you know, attached, but it is not, right? It just pulls right off of there. So don't be dissuaded by this. It's doable. Yeah. So see how when it gets on this rounded, protruding edge, you know, it's kind of the cycle. It just is going to keep walking. The wheels are spinning fast enough that, you know, causes a vibration, and it just spins itself around to the right hand side, gets itself locked in that corner. And you know, if you don't have substantial backup power, you just can't get yourself out of that hole. Almost in the hole. And now it is, there you go. Now it's in the hole. But see, it's got juice to you. Look at there. I mean, it had enough juice to just, you know, wrangle itself right out of there. Power to just climb right up and get out. It didn't even, I mean, the backup valve never even had time to kick in. Look at there, it's trying to climb. There it climbs up, and yeah, now the backup valve's kicking. Let's see what kind of a job it does. That's backup valve at low 1800 RPMs. Look at how well it's backing it out of there, pulling it in. Still pulling. Backup valve is still pulling. It's pulled the thing all the way into the middle of the pool. Still pulling. Okay, now it looks like, yeah, backup valve's let go, and now the Polaris has got the power again. This is the Polaris fixed. It's getting around really good, but the neat part of it's getting around good is it's on the lowest main pump setting of 1800 RPM. I mean, will it go lower RPM? Yeah, it will. I could go all the way down to 1500, But at 1800, I'm saving a lot of power. It puts me at like 200 watts, you know, where I was at 1500, 2000 watts. But I mean, just look at how this thing's getting around. I mean, it rocks. It climbs. It's climbing right up the wall here. It's gonna hit the thing. Oh boy, yeah. That's what you hate to really see right there. That's the only bad part of a Polaris that really gets around, is climbing itself, tangling up. But yeah, unfortunately, you know, that's one thing you have to deal with. It climbs over that, you've got one wrap in it, and it's more likely to do it again and again. Next thing you know is 4 hours goes by and you come out here and the thing's all wadded up here. Look at that, climbing right up. 1800 RPM, low power on the pump, main pump. And, Polaris has still got lots of juice. Very rarely will it lock itself in over there. The backup valve, there, you see the backup valve here, I'm pointing to it. The thing kicks and it's got nice power to pull it back out. Looks like that baby's starting to kick in right now. Yep, it is. Backup valve starting to kick. Okay, so it's directed straight up, so it's not a real good example here, but anyway, you can tell it's got, see how it's pulling the thing up, pulling it right up off of the floor of the pool. So, and that's deep. So, you know, it shows you it's got backup power. Takes off again. Around the pool, vacuuming up all the stuff. You know, statistically, you're going to get your pool, you know, all picked up and cleaned. The faster this thing, the better it gets around. And it's covering, you know, so much territory and high up on the walls like it is. It's just going to keep your pool a lot cleaner without you having to constantly use the net to clean your pool.